Good evening and welcome. I'm Sheila Balgobin and I am the Dream Decipherer, and I help you to crack the code of your sleep and dreams so you can sleep sound and dream deep. Just trying to get through a technology glitch this evening. I couldn't get my live started, and then it started without me, and it's a bit of a mess, but here I am and we'll get right into it. The dreamer reports that they were in a cafeteria, and while getting some coffee, a young child stole his food, and the dreamer pushed this child to the floor and began kicking the child violently, telling them never to steal from him again. Then the dreamer reports being in a cafeteria standing by a coffee machine and found himself to be naked when two friends, a male and female, walked in. The dreamer asked them not to look at him because he was naked, but it was too late. They had already seen him. The next part of the dreamer reports being at a job interview, and the dreamer and the other job candidates were asked to do some kind of role play. Apparently, there were four people: a young woman, a young man, or a man anyway, and an older gentleman who was the interviewer and the dreamer. The interviewer asked the dreamer and these other parties to create and act out various scenarios that it could occur in a team. And what the dreamer came up with was a love triangle, the two people having an affair, and one person planning to rip off the other people. So there's that little vignette going on. Then following that, the dreamer reports that after they had finished, subsuming, which he was talking about the interview, after having finished, a gentleman, presumably the interviewer, it's not clear here, went to make a phone call and told the dreamer and the other parties to wait in a car, that they would be going for a meal afterwards, after the call had finished. It was raining, apparently, and the dreamer took off some black flip-flops, and his feet got all wet, and his clothes got soaked. So while waiting in this black 4x4 vehicle, the dreamer had taken the wet clothes off to dry. Now, the young woman and the gentleman who had also been at the interview could both see that he was Starkers, and the dreamer felt embarrassed, particularly when they, observed his manhood. But neither one said anything; they just smiled. So, but eventually the dreamer put back on his clothes, but instead of these black flip-flops, put on some red trainers, and everyone went for pizza. Presumably the interviewer had returned, and they drove off to get some pizza. And there the dream ends. There is a lot going on in this dream. I've broken it up into four sections to look at separately, and then look at what the connections between all of these different vignettes may be. So starting with the first section, where there's the scenario is a cafeteria. Now, a cafeteria implies food or getting sustenance, nourishment, being in a public place or a place where a lot of people may congregate. And in both occasions, when this cafeteria was mentioned, the dreamer is either drinking coffee, getting coffee, or standing near a coffee machine. And I wonder, for the dreamer, what this is about. It seems to be some need for artificial stimulation, or a caffeine hit, as it were. And I would ask the dreamer here, is there an area of their life that feels like it needs a kind of hit of caffeine or something to stimulate it, um, in order to feel, in some way, feel nourished or taken care of in some way. Then you have this child that the who was stealing some food from the while the dreamer was off getting this coffee, and the reaction of the dreamer was very, very violent, kicking at the child and screaming at him not to ever steal from him again. And I wonder if there may be a strong need for the dreamer to, in some area of their life, to let off steam in some way, that there's something that really is really bothering the dreamer, but is the dreamer is either unaware of or is not acknowledging, and makes them feel like they want to hit out or be violent in some way. So my question directly is there something that the dreamer is particularly upset about and not expressing it, and makes them feel like they want to hit, kick, or punch someone or something to let off steam? And there also seems to be here something about this theft of nourishment, someone taking something away from the dreamer. And my question here would be, who or what may be stealing nourishment in some way from the dreamer, whether it be physical nourishment or more feeding of the soul, so to speak. What is it, or who is it, that's making the dreamer feel like something has been stolen from them that nourishes them? Then the dreamer finds themselves naked suddenly in the cafeteria, with and two friends who come into, a male and female, come into the cafeteria, see him, even though he belatedly asked them not to look. They had already seen that he was naked. And naked implies that an honesty, or being straightforward, or being completely transparent in some way. And I would ask here if the dreamer has someone or something that doesn't want to see the light of day, that the dreamer would prefer not to be seen, not to be apparent, or if it's apparent, that people ignore it in some way. So there's something about that nakedness or honesty that the dreamer seems to be wanting to reject in some way. Now, if that's the case, my next question for the dreamer here is, why does the dreamer feel the need to hide their true self? Is it fear? Is it shame? What drives this behavior, or this feeling that they're wanting to hide, even though they're hiding in plain sight? This is the funny bit about it. I mean, they're hiding, but they're doing it in public in front of everybody. So is this mask really as effective as the dreamer might think? So there's a contradiction here about, being transparent and honest, but don't look at me while I do it. I mean, or is there something that needs to be hidden that is apparent? I mean, there's just a bit of a contradiction there. Either the dreamer needs to become completely clean and be completely honest and naked, or the dreamer needs to decline that openness and honesty and cover themselves up and go into hiding. Now, what is it that causes this feeling of conflict within the dreamer about being their honest self, but deceiving others, or pretending or trying to get them to not see them as they really are? What is that about? And what drives this need to hide oneself from others while exposing oneself at the same time? It's a bit unbalanced if you think about it. On the one hand, you want to be seen as being honest and transparent, but when you are honest and transparent, you don't want to be seen. You want people to look away. There's a contradiction there, and what is that about? What could that be about? Then we have the job interview. You have the dreamer and two other people interviewing for an unnamed position. And the people who are being interviewed are asked to come up with and act out various scenarios that might occur among the team at work. Now, here the dreamer suggests several scenarios that all include um, illicit activities of different kinds. One, an office affair, a love triangle, and theft. So why these specific scenarios, I would ask the dreamer? Has this something that's happened actually in waking life for the dreamer, or has been observed by the dreamer? What is it about these particular scenarios made the dreamer choose them? Is there some kind of connection with them or resonance with them that the dreamer had come up with these particular ideas? Though the dreamer does state that the dreamer had come up with various scenarios, but the three that were mentioned were these three. Now, once interview is actually over, a man, presumably the interviewer, asks the candidates to sit in a car, a black 4x4 as it happens, while they go off and make a phone call. Now, apparently, on the way to the car, the dreamer gets wet and was wearing black flip-flops, which seems strange if you're at an interview wearing flip-flops, but never mind. The dreamer gets his feet all wet from wearing these black flip-flops, so takes them off. And in the meantime, their clothes are soaked through from the rain. Gets in the vehicle and takes off his clothes so that they can dry. Now, there is this woman and this other man who were both candidates for this unnamed job that were sitting in the vehicle and saw that the dreamer was naked. He's embarrassed because he feels that, he doesn't measure up, if you know what I mean. But the other two just observe and smile. They say nothing. Eventually, the dreamer gets back into their clothes, but instead of these black flip-flops now, they're wearing red trainers or sneakers. Where did they come from? Now, there's a couple of things here that could be looked at in several different ways, but the first thing is the rain. Now, the rain can be gentle, it could be a storm, but it implies some kind of cleansing of the earth, or cleansing in some way, clearing away the old energy and bringing in something new and fresh. So you could say that it's a divine bath to cleanse and clear. And I wonder if this is a vague reference for the dreamer to some kind of divine cleansing or healing of the soul taking place here. Now, this dreamer is more concerned in this dream about how they are perceived than the fact that they might have caught pneumonia sitting in these wet clothes. Is like size matters, and that's more important than actually getting himself warm and dry from the rain. Again, this nakedness, appearing as oneself, being true and honest and transparent, is problematic for the dreamer. As it needs to be honest and clear, transparent and naked, but others are observing and he's embarrassed about it. So again, there's this strange contradiction about wanting to be oneself, i.e. naked, and others observing that and having something to say about it. Now, these footwear, going from flip-flops to a pair of trainers. And I just wonder, we take it a bit more literally, if you will. The unconscious does like to use plays on words and metaphors and other stratagems to get us to pay attention. Now, the going into the vehicle, or just before going into the vehicle, the dreamer was wearing flip-flops. And we know that people who flip-flop dither back and forth between things without making a decision. So what is it the dreamer is flip-flopping about? What is this? I mean, we can see that there's this flip-flop between I want to be naked and honest and transparent and show the naked truth, but I don't want you to look. So there is some flip-flopping going on with this dreamer, apparently. And then it goes from wearing these flip-flops to wearing red trainers. And what came up for me was a couple of things. First of all, the question is black versus red. What do these colors actually signify for the dreamer? In financial terms, we talk about being in the black, which is being, having money in the bank, versus being in the red, being suffering a loss. And I wonder if there's something about being in the black, being in a positive state, as opposed to being in the red and taking a loss of some kind. And if that's what this is about for the dreamer, that's, being in this black state, quote unquote, puts the dreamer in a positive place, whereas being in the red would imply some kind of loss or negative state. Now, again, my question here would be, is the dreamer flip-flopping about something in their life? They're like, should I, shouldn't I, shouldn't I? Yes, no. Is there something like that going on in the dreamer's life? And can the issue be resolved in some way so that they don't have to keep flip-flopping back and forth? Now, after all of this, the candidates and the interviewer apparently go for a meal and have pizza. And my questions here is, what significance, if any, does pizza have for the dreamer? I mean, I look at it as, it's something that's shared, it's informal, everyone gets a piece of the pie. So everybody gets a bit of something here. And I wonder if there's something about that where the dreamer has to be able to have a point of commonality, which means that they have to, either by choice or because they're forced in some way, to conform and be part of the crowd so that they can have a piece of the pie. Now, to try to tie all of this together and see what the connections could possibly be and what they might mean for the dreamer, the first thing that came up to me was these twos. There's multiples of twos or two in this dream. For example, the cafeteria comes up twice. The coffee machine comes up twice. There are 4 people that are involved in the rest of the dream in parts 3 and 4 of the dream. 3 candidates for a job plus the interviewer. 4 people in the vehicle going to get pizza. A 4x4 vehicle. So food is mentioned in various contexts twice, in the first part and the last part of the dream. And there seems to be some kind of concern or anxiety around relationships, where there's a dichotomy of sorts between being exposed and being in hiding. And something about relationships and not being quite legitimate. There's like illicit activities and illicit relationships that seem to be highlighted here. We look at the rain in this dream. It washes away dirt and exposes the dreamer. The dreamer, in essence, becomes naked again. In 2 occasions, they're mentioned being naked. in response to the rain soaking his clothes. Well, in one part of the dream, in the other, not. Didn't get wet. But my question here for the dreamer is there any part or area of the dreamer's life that has or could become exposed, leaving them feeling naked in the gaze of others? Something that they feel that must be hidden, yet is hidden, being hidden in plain sight. And um, there seems to be a bit of divine intervention here, and it's the serendipity or the divine or what have you that causes this exposure to take place, rather than it being on a willingly done by the dreamer. So it's like, somebody or something happens and they need to suddenly find themselves naked for whatever reason. Now, come back to the nudity bit again, not because I want to titillate anybody, but it is important. Becoming naked for the dream occurs twice for the dreamer as well, in the two of the sections of the dream, two and four, as it happens. Now, what is the significance of this series of twos, or these factors of two for the dreamer? What does two mean? What does four mean? Two could be a partnership. Four could be, as in some circles, it means that you're grounded and settled, i.e., four squared. And four squared is a kind of a shorthand for something that is firm, solid, unyielding, and unhesitating. So is there something that this fourness represent grounded, settledness, and being unyielding in a particular stance or position in the dreamer's life? And are these four square principles something that the dreamer aspires to or actually believes in? Could this be where there's the possible conflict for the dreamer, living a four square life visibly, but living a double or two-sided or double life otherwise? So there's something about the obvious life, the visible life, and maybe a life that wants to be kept hidden, but gets exposed in some way. So there you have it. There was a lot going on in that dream, and I'm sure there's a lot more that I could pull out of it. And as always, I will hear back from the dreamer to find out what all of this stimulated for them and what possible meaning it may have for them. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And if you have a dream that's got you scratching your head, contact me. You can always book a 15-minute free assessment at www.meetingwithsheila.com. And I will give you some tips as to how you can look at your dream and possibly pull some information out of it. Have a great evening and rest of the week, and I'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.